No.
How was your day?
No. It's actually because I messaged them like last time I was in Tuesday. Everybody.
Yeah, you'll find out. They call It's funny though. Because I didn't respond. How can I get a response? The only way I found it is there's a website. And somebody pointed me to that. That's when I saw her.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. So today we're doing a resume workshop. I hope you guys all have your resumes. But first, before all that, let me introduce our speaker for today. It's going to be Jack Bolton. So I'll read this little blurb, but he is a systems engineering professional and engineering manager at Collins Aerospace, who has spent the last 17 years focusing on leadership and personal development. And he definitely has helped me in my leadership and personal development skills. He is an Army veteran who has worked in unmanned platforms, DoD communications, GPS navigation and landing systems, mission systems development, and most recently, the NC3 community. And he's going to be walking you guys through what makes a resume stand out, because he has looked at many resumes, and so he knows. But yeah, I'll hand it over to Chuck, and thank you very much, everybody.
Okay, he
I
doesn't
don't
need
need
the
a
mic.
microphone. If you can't hear me, let me know. So first things first on a resume, don't do what I did in my introduction, because acronyms are a big no-no. And you'll see I used a number of them. Does everyone know what DOD is? DOD's Department of Defense. GPS, everyone know that one? Global Positioning System. NC3 is Nuclear Command, Control, and Communication. So I pulled those out because as you're going through your resume, one of the things you have to do is you have to remember that the person reading your resume isn't you. So you have to write it under the assumption that they don't know what you know. So acronyms, don't use them. Spell them out where you can. If it's like GPS and it's so common, yeah, you can use that. The other thing that I'll say is same thing goes for school awards, right? If you've got something and it's a Dean's Award, I'm going to know what it is and what it means. But if you got the Joe Snuffy, right, Honors Award, I don't know what that's for. So just something to keep in mind as you're doing your resume. Now, I'm going to go through and I'm going to give you the resume speech that I give to everybody. And before I do, I'd like you guys to raise your hands. Who has gone through career services on campus? Okay. If I conflict with your career services advice on resumes, it is your choice. The biggest thing you need to remember, your resume represents you. Take everyone's input and then go make the resume you want to make, because there are things that they will tell you that in some areas work, and I will tell you as a manager, don't do that. There are areas where I'll sit down and look at your resume and I'll say, you need to do this. And you'll look at it and say, but that doesn't feel like me, right? That's not my resume. So as we go through this, I'm just going to basically walk through the way I typically structure my resume, the reason that I structure it that way, and the things that I look for in a resume, especially when I'm out at a college campus. It's a little different when you're directly applying for a job, and I'll cover that as well. So before we get going, does anyone have any questions they just had to get answered before I? Nobody? Okay. So first things first, I work in defense. If you're applying for a job in defense, the number one thing you can do to your resume is in your header, put whether or not you have a clearance and your legal right to work in the U.S. I can't even go further than that question if I don't see that. So my first question to anybody when I come to a career fair, if I don't see that on the resume, is what is your legal right to work in the U.S.? Is there anything that prohibits you from getting a clearance? Now, that only applies to defense, aerospace, but it's a good practice to just get it there, because there are actually some jobs in the commercial market, especially when it's around FAA, where that may still be a requirement. If you get that out there, the discussion goes smoother, right? We can jump straight to the next one, which is looking at your skills. The way you structure your resume, you get a lot of different advice on that. I personally like a skills-based resume. When I'm looking for somebody to hire, my number one thing is I have these things I'm looking for. I need to see them. And if I've got to hunt your whole resume to see them, right, I'm probably going to come back to it and look at the ones where it's going to be easy to see first. So when we have a position, when we come to a career fair, I may get 200 resumes. As I'm going through those 200 resumes, I'm looking for the ones that stand out and jump out at me. Anyone have an objective statement on their resume? Okay, I have an objective statement on all my resumes. I will tell you, as an engineering manager who's hired hundreds of people, I've never read a cover letter. Doesn't mean they don't write cover letters. It means you also need your resume to be succinct about the content that you want to put in your cover letter. So that is not probably 100% normal. You'll find areas where they say that. When you're applying, especially to engineering positions, I find that the cover letter ends up being superfluous. You don't really need it if your resume is structured correctly. You guys are in school. My suggested structure for your resume is going to be skills. And when I say skills, I don't mean classes, right? You took classes, but the classes gave you skills. Those are the things I care about. So I don't care if you took a second-year coding class. What I care about is you understand object-oriented programming with C++. That's the kind of thing that I would expect to see in the skills. You can put soft skills. Who knows what soft skills are? Give me an example. Problem solving. Anyone else? Adaptability. Okay. Public speaking. Now, most of your resume, I'm looking for proof. If you say you've done C++, I'm going to ask you where you've done C++, or I'm going to look in your bullets for C++. The problem is you can't prove that you're good at public speaking on a resume. You can't prove that you have problem-solving skills. That said, if you put soft skills, I'm going to try to get you to prove them, because in a lot of cases, I'm looking for some of those soft skills. Problem-solving skills, troubleshooting, public speaking, those are all important. And in fact, even for engineering, those are important. Because at some point in your career, you're going to have to explain something to somebody, And if you can't figure out how to bridge that communication gap, it's going to go poorly. Probably for you, probably for the company, potentially for the customer. So when you're doing the skills, please make sure you consider all of the things that are associated with it. A lot of groups will tell you you don't put skills at the top. This is your choice. It's your resume. The best resume I ever saw, I went through a young lady's resume. I gave her 3 pages of notes, recommendations, and she looked at me and she said, I don't agree with any of that, but I rewrote my resume the way I wanted, and it was one of the best resumes I've ever seen. Because when I read that resume, and as I was going through this process, I got to know her, it read just like she sounded when she talked to me about what she'd done, which is important, right? Your resume represents you. So make sure when you do it, don't let somebody else write your resume. I've had people show up to interviews and I ask them about their resume and they're like, oh, I didn't know that was on there. Well, that's not good, right? Next thing you're going to have is you're going to have your education. Now, when you go to career services, they're going to tell you if you have less than a 3.0, don't put your GPA on there. What do you think that tells me if I don't see a GPA? Well, it tells me that it's probably less than 3.0 because I know that's the guidance that students get. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Just to be clear, I didn't graduate with a 4.0 or anything even close to that. What it is going to do, though, is it's going to do one of two things. If I'm the type of manager that's going in and GPA is the first thing I'm looking at, I'm just going to drop your resume because I'm going to assume it's below 3.0. It happens. You can't avoid that. That's okay because one of the things I also tell people is if somebody didn't hire you, that's their loss. You don't want to work for them if they're going to be that judgmental. So the other thing is for me, as somebody who had a lot of struggles in college, dropped out a couple times, went back. I ask, hey, what's your GPA? If it's low, I ask, what happened? I'm looking to see, did you learn your lesson? Are there things that you took out of that as a growth experience that make up for the fact that you didn't get that 4.0? Now, 4.0s are great. I'm not saying don't apply yourself. I'm saying it's not the end of the world if you don't have that. But if you leave your GPA off your resume, 100% every manager that reads it's going to assume it's below 3.0. So because we all know, because we got the same guidance coming out of college, if it's below 3.0, don't put it on the resume. I actually encourage people just put it on the resume. If they were going to cut you for your GPA, they're going to cut it they'll cut you if they don't see it because they're going to make that assumption. When I was a manager in GPS navigation, I got a resume from Rose Holman from a young lady who had a 2.7. Now, typically in the group that I was in, that was pretty low. And looking at the resume, I really couldn't bring myself to hire her, but I interviewed her because the person was really adamant that she needed to work for us. She was starting her senior year, and I gave her some advice. I said, hey, look, GPA is a little low. What I'm looking for you this year is show me that you can bring it back up. I went back to Rose Holman in the spring, and I was sitting in something, and I hear this young lady that I'd never seen before, I'd never visually seen, and she was talking about all these things she was doing to increase her GPA because she got advice in the fall to do that. And so I went and I introduced myself. Turns out it was the same young lady, and she didn't know I was listening. She didn't know I was there. We walked away from that. She walked away with a job offer, and I walked away with a really great mechanical engineer joining my team. And what she had done to get in that situation, she overcame through her communication with me, through her willingness to accept where she was. On the same token, I asked somebody, hey, what's your GPA? Because it wasn't on the resume. I was at a career fair. And he said 2.6. And I said, well, what happened? And he said, it's like that. And I was like, yes, it is. Please go to careers.rtx.com. You can apply for any job there. Because I was done talking, right? He didn't want to actually tell me about what happened and show me that he learned from it. So the long-winded way of saying, Own your resume, own what's in it, even the mistakes. So for context, right, I don't keep it in my resume, but I was a high school dropout. I was a college dropout. I did all kinds of dumb decisions. I now have a master's, so I overcame it. If you explain what you learned through it, though, you can get over it. Who knows what the number one purpose of your resume is? It's really simple. To get an interview. Okay. So as you're going through that, keep that in mind. Okay. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on education. One of the things I'll tell you is I almost never look at your class list. As an engineer, especially if you went through a STEM degree, I kind of know what classes you went through. I'm looking for skills. I might go through your class list if you don't have skills on your resume and I didn't see what I was looking for in the bullets. But generally, I'm not going to go out to UTD and read what that class was about. So again, up to you if you put it on there. I have not seen it provide a whole lot of value for me as a hiring manager. Some other things, school, the things you do at school, the clubs that you're in, the extracurricular activities, those are all good to have on your resume. They do go underneath your education and underneath your work experience because they're all going to be secondary when you're applying for a job. When you're doing your work experience, for your first job, it will always be after your education. As soon as you graduate, flip it, right? So once you've had that first job, unless you went to MIT, I don't really care where you went to school. I mean, I'll probably look to see, and if you went to somewhere I think is awesome, I'll probably bring it up. But I'm looking at your work from that point on. So once you get that internship, once you get that co-op, keep in mind, that's actually where I'm spending most of my time. I'm going to go in, I'm going to look at the bullets. What did you do? And you need to be good about writing this. So you guys do a lot, even in your summer research, right? It doesn't have to be an internship. You guys do a lot. You need to communicate that to me. You need to tell me, what did you learn? What are the activities you worked on? You need to tell me what sort of skills did you walk away with, and do it in action-oriented statements, right? You built, you created, you defined, right? Don't say, I helped, right? Sure, you helped. What did you help do? That's what you did. It's okay. I know you were on a team because almost nobody works alone. So you don't have to worry about that piece. Make sure you write that in a way that's clear, crisp, and we're going to talk about this, focused on the job that you want. Everything else goes after that. A note on work experience. I don't care what you did before college. I don't care if you had a job during college. I'm not looking. So you don't have to put what you did in high school unless it's relevant to what you're applying for. You don't have to put your college job unless it's relevant to what you're applying for. So was it Nesby? Young lady sits down, gives me an 8-page resume. It had everything back to her middle school babysitting on it. I'm not joking. Like literally had everything back to her middle school babysitting. I told her, you don't need this. She said, but my job history has to be in my resume. It's like, you're coming out of college. None of that's applicable to the job you're applying for. I'm not looking at it, right? Honestly, unless it's applicable, I might go look and see, do you have a bullet? Are you calling out because you were a manager and you're showing leadership as a soft skill and you're using that manager role to prove your soft skill piece? That's okay. Keep that in there. But if you're an Uber driver to make money in college, unless I'm hiring you to drive, right? It's not really buying you anything to keep it on there. And I don't expect to see it, especially if you're applying for an engineering job. What are you doing that's applicable to the job you're applying for? So keep that in mind. Work history, it only needs to be relevant and it only needs to be covering the areas where the expectation is you have it. If you didn't have any internships, didn't have any co-ops and you're about to graduate, that's okay. You still don't need to put work history just to have work history. Put down the skills, focus on what you learned, focus on your research, focus on any writing papers that you did, because those show why you didn't do an internship. Because what I will tell you is you can do an internship or a co-op, or you can do research. Is it possible to really do both?
I don't know about that.
So,
What if the research is during the school?
if it's during, it's still applicable. You did research. So here's the thing. Majority of the fact checking that the employer does on the resume is actually going to be through the conversation with you. Honestly, if I'm calling you because of your research, it doesn't matter when it was. I'm calling you because I know that you have that experience. And you can put all of that in there. If you get an internship in a co-op, you are always lobbying to get that second year. So just keep that in mind. Internships and co-ops should end in offers to come back. If they don't end in offers to come back, either the business is not doing well, or you need to have a conversation about things you could have done better. Because when I go through and I'm looking for people that have consistent work experience in the field that they're looking at. So internships, co-ops, research is fine. If you're going to do research, make sure you do a good job of applying it to what you're, or of writing it so it works to what you're applying for. Had a gentleman at UIUC comes up to me. I read his resume. It looks like he was a janitor all summer. Like when I looked at his resume, it said that he did research in this facility, and he even had like something about maintaining some piece of device, right? It kind of read like nothing. And then I asked him about it. And when he described it, he reprogrammed a drone to be able to follow a course at this laboratory he was doing research at. None of this is in his resume, mind you. He did all this stuff. And I was like, well, I'll tell you what, I want you to go back to your dorm room right now and rewrite your resume and come back tomorrow morning. Because if he had done that, I was actually going to hire him. He had a lot of good skills, right? He was a good communicator. He had a really bad resume. He didn't come back, so he didn't get a job. But I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't asked. And if we had been busy at the booth when he'd have come up, I probably wouldn't have asked. I would have looked at his resume. I would have asked him a few questions that are boilerplate questions we have to ask everybody, and then I would have filed it because I have to keep going, right? Last time I was at the UTD Career Fair, I think the Raytheon line went like all the way out the door, and we were in the back corner of the room. So there's a lot of people to meet. Everything after your work experience is entirely up to you. Clubs are awesome, especially if they tell me about you. If you had a leadership role, if they explain areas where you have skills and interests, especially when they're applicable to the job. Again, make sure they're written properly. Most of your clubs are not going to bring bullets into your resume that are going to be applicable to your job unless it specifically aligns with what you're going to school for. So use an engineering example. If you help to develop a drone in a club, peace, keep it. You're in the chess club, I'm not sure that I'm really going to care. I'm not a chess player. So if there was a chess player, they would probably really care. So make sure that as you're going through that, you do what it takes to keep your resume at one page and make sure it represents you. And you can still do things that aren't applicable. I had a young man from Tuskegee. I was looking at his resume. There were two resumes. They were almost identical. And on one of the resumes, this young man said shepherd. And I was like the sheep. So I called him, right? I wanted to know at that point. He caught my interest. Now, he had a good resume, so I wasn't just calling him because he put shepherd on it. But I called him, and he explained, yes, actually, in the summers, he went to his family's farm in Alabama, and he was a shepherd. He tended the sheep. He spent his time doing that in the summer. That got him a longer conversation than it would have. So if you have anything interesting you want to put it on there, it's okay to put it on there. Now, it may not help, right? It piqued my interest. Some people might have saw it and been like, okay, whatever. The other thing is make sure you talk about the things that you've done, because in that case, those two resumes were identical. Those two students had very similar experiences, different schools. Uthman volunteered the entire school year by reaching out to new Muslim students, introducing them to the school, the culture in Atlanta. And in the end, that was the deciding factor, because technically I couldn't really make that call. So I went with the person that was going to be the best team player. So again, all of these things make a difference. All of them should reflect you. And when I call you, I should hear your resume coming over the phone. So don't let somebody else write it. Don't let somebody tell you how to structure it. Everything I just gave you is data. And you're going to go make the resume you want. And if you ignore everything I said and you're true to yourself, that's great, because that's going to make a good resume. Big thing though is resume is only to get you what? The interview. There's some tricks to do that. You can cheat. I actually recommend you cheat as much as possible to get that interview. Okay, where am I at? So, what's that?
Click share this tab instead. So then, because we're live.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Is that good?
Yes.
Okay. Anytime you're applying for a job, career fairs are different. Career fair, you probably want to have one resume for each type of job you're looking for. Don't go in with one resume. It's a big challenge. If you're going to a company that does commercial software, and then you come to an aerospace company with the same resume, it's gonna feel different, right? It's gonna hit different. I'm not going to be as excited about some of the things you did as I might be if you really did it focused on the software or the work that my company did. So I'm going to explain to you how to cheat on your resume, and I'm going to tell you something you need to understand. You should never submit the same resume twice, ever, anywhere. That's an important thing to understand, because you are trying to get that interview. Once you get that interview, you sell yourself. You don't need to worry about it, right? Once you're there, you're golden. But to get that interview, you need to pique that manager's interest. You need to get them believing that you are the person that fits the needs of their job. How do you do that? You put their words back to them. So I got a job rec up here. Gratuitous plug for Raytheon and specifically Collins Aerospace at Runner Road, where Cherie works. This is for a position in the organization that I work in, and it is for, where's the title? System Specialty Engineer, Spring Summer Co-op. So System Specialty Engineer could be reliability, maintainability, safety, any of those. If those are things you're interested in, you come out, you find this, and you're like, okay, well, that sounds cool. I'm going to go take a look at it. And then you read through. You're going to go through, and pretty much every paragraph for every job you ever look at is going to be junk. It's going to be, hey, right? Let me catch your eye with some buzzword statement. HR writes those for us. We never write those. And then they're going to have probably something the manager wrote that's going to sound buzzwordy, but not as good. So if you look at the second paragraph, Collins Aerospace, we're not just designing systems, we're crafting the backbone of mission critical systems. I'm pretty sure Shannon wrote that. Again, this is still just to catch your eye. It's not saying anything you need to know about the rec. Once you start getting past those paragraphs where they kind of read like a marketing pitch, you're starting to get into the meat of the resume. And that's what you need to pay attention to. So they're going to say some things that you need to understand. First off, they say national defense, right? End of the second paragraph. That tells you this is a defense job. If it wasn't obvious from the company you went to in the area, this is a defense job. Number one thing on a defense resume, clearance and or legal right to work in the U.S. right in the header.
Is there any way to get security clearance without getting sponsored?
No, you have to get sponsored by a company. You have to have a need to know. So that said, you can get a security clearance by going through an internship or a co-op. Once you get it, it needs to be on your resume because that's a big deal. It takes time. It takes months to get a security clearance. I had a student that worked for me. I put her in for a TS clearance. She stayed working part-time, got a TS clearance. At that point, we're so committed. She was getting a job whether she wanted it or not, because we put a lot of time and waited a long time to get her that clearance. Now, she was phenomenal as well. So then there's some other things that they tell you. You don't have to have previous experience. Well, that's good. Specialty, reliability, maintainability. There's only a few schools that actually teach that as a specialty. But it's going to tell you more. It's going to tell you that it's in the nuclear deterrence domain. So nuclear deterrence, for those of you that don't know, that is literally working on the platforms that make up the nuclear command and control backbone of the U.S. So we can have a whole nother discussion on that if anyone's interested, but I'm not going to get into that. Then they say what you will do. You're going to create, decompose, and trace system specialty requirements. If you've done that, right, if you've already had an internship where you did requirements work, what should your bullet for that requirements work say? It should say created, decomposed, and traced systems requirements. Why? That's exactly what Shammy's looking for. So Shamreen Pradham is the manager for this rec. That's why I keep saying Shammy, by the way, because this is one of my peers' recs. Okay, so then it's going to say for communication systems and military platforms for air and ground. If you did anything associated with communication systems, air systems, ground systems, right, and you can put that bullet in, you're tailoring your resume to this rec. Now, what I'm going to tell you is, if you think you might have done something associated with it, tell yourself yes. Write the bullet. If you were wrong, we'll tell you. It's going to say that you're going to do reliability, maintainability, system safety, or human factors, right? If any of those are areas that you've done work in school, they need to be in your resume in the bullets. Even if you just had one human engineering class, one human machine interface class, that needs to be present. It needs to be there so you're relevant to the rec that you're applying for. It's going to talk about, again, we keep hitting on the same things, communication systems. So as you can guess, this is probably for something that's heavy in radios. And if you go look at Collins at Renner, you'll find that that's really all of what they do. If that is an interest area, if that is an area where you spent time in college, repeat that back to them, but don't say radios. Say what? Communication systems. Why? Because that's what Shammy's looking for. She's looking for people who understand what communication systems are. Okay. So the other piece here, successfully be part of an integrated project team. They're looking for team players. They want to know that you can be part of a team, right? If they say, what's the toughest part about a group project in school, and you say finding a team good enough to work with, you're not getting this job. But if you can say, the biggest part for me about something like this is when I'm working with a team, figuring out the right way for all of us to work together and succeed, that's going to set you up a lot better. But that also means anywhere in your background, whether it's big school projects, senior research projects, internships, co-ops, where you did team-related work, that should be in your bullets. Again, you're cheating the system. You are writing your resume for Shamreen Pradham, who is looking for a specialty engineer. And you're going to convince her in your resume, you are a specialty engineer. And then you just have to continue to convince her once she calls you because you got the interview. Okay, so there's some qualifications that you must have. Now, when it comes to must-have qualifications, these are the things that if you can't say yes to them, you won't even make it to the manager, right? In some cases, it's an automated system where it'll ask you questions and it'll kick you back. And so if you ever like apply for a job and before you get done clicking send, you get an email saying, sorry, right, you weren't a good fit, means you answered no to the wrong question, right? You answered one of those questions and they had an automatic system. I don't think at Collins we use that, but if you can't say you're a US citizen, I won't ever actually see your resume unless it's a career fit. And part of that is to save my sanity. Because when we put jobs out there, we get a lot of people applying. if you think you can say yes to anything on the must-have requirements, tell yourself yes. So if they say active secret DoD clearance is required, you can't say you have an active clearance, but you can say, I don't have anything that would stop me from having an active clearance. So if you get it for me, I'm capable of having it. Wording matters, though. In this case, it says required, so it has to be active. If it says ability to achieve, and you're not sure if you have the ability to achieve a clearance, I mean, you can do the research on the internet. It's pretty easy to find out. Say yes, right? There will be a point in the process where they'll tell you, oh, you actually can't get a clearance, but you got the interview. And in the interview, that's where you get to sell yourself. Okay, qualifications we prefer. These are things that we're looking for that they're not exactly what we're hiring for, but the more of them you have, the better off you are. So when they have qualifications you prefer, additional responsibilities, whatever wording they use, you want to go through and you want to say, okay, I have these things, and you want to use their words. I have a high level of understanding of both hardware and software designs. I'm a computer engineering major. Of course I do. I'm an aerospace major. Of course I do. High level of understanding communication theory, networking, digital processing, right? I'm a computer science major. Of course I do. Put those words back out at them. Experience with a highly collaborative technical environment. You guys do that all the time in college. It might not be the systems we use, but say, I work on this. It's a highly collaborative technical environment. You guys can use those words back to that manager. Because again, you're just trying to get the interview. Now, don't say it if you don't believe it. That's an important thing. Use those words, but if you don't feel it, if it doesn't feel right, if you can't say it to me with confidence, don't put it in your resume. Okay. Last bullet, excellent verbal, documentation, and writing skills. I'm going to know if you have that before I ever call you. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to open up your resume. If it's formatted like junk, you don't have excellent documentation or writing skills. I have a weird nitpick. If you used carriage returns to get white space in your resume, I don't know why, it drives me crazy. Use Word, use the formatting, use the tools you have. But a lot of that you have to prove. You have to show them you have that. So when you get that call and you're at the interview, try to avoid some of the things they tell you in your speech classes that you should avoid. Pauses. The manager's going to do it. They're going to say like 100 times, and you're just going to want to repeat it. You shouldn't do it because they won't hear themselves say or so or like, but they'll hear it when you say it. And that's how you prove, by not doing that, you prove you have good verbal skills. So again, soft skills, you're going to prove in the interview. They're going to ask questions to get you to prove it. They're going to talk about your resume to get you to prove it. Most of the places I've worked haven't actually done a really crazy technical interview. There were some goofy guys in GPS at Collins way back when that would ask like thermodynamics questions. And I would just look at him and I'd be like, Doug, you're a moron. I'm not really waiting for the answer on this one. Because it really didn't apply. We didn't actually solve any thermodynamics problems. He was trying to judge whether or not the person had enough math for him to be comfortable hiring them. Some places do have that. So that's something, if you know the place has it, do a little research on the company, be ready for it. Make sure no matter what you do though, don't submit the same resume twice. I've been doing this since 2007. I have never submitted the same resume twice, ever. I keep a curriculum vitae style resume that just has all the bullets I've ever written, even about all the stuff that, like the Army stuff that has nothing to do with engineering. And every once in a while, I'll be like, well, they want to know that I have the ability to manage, right, a $2 million project. Well, I haven't managed a $2 million project, but when I was in the Army, I managed the arms room, and that was about $8 million worth of equipment. So I'm going to pull that up because it shows a level of responsibility. You'll find that you'll be able to pull those out, but only pull out the things that are relevant. So if you went and you had an internship at a really great company, and then you came and you applied for this, that internship is important. But does Shami care if you use some weird system that only applies to that industry? She doesn't, right? It doesn't mean anything to her. So you need to take that internship and make Shami care about it. And the way you do that is you take her words and you use that to describe your internship back to her. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, biggest rule. Resume advice always stinks. It's always bad. My resume advice, terrible. But I give it because the more data points you have, the better decision you can make about your resume. The more you take the time to think about your resume, the better your resume is going to be. So you're going to leave here, or actually you're going to talk to each other, you're going to give each other terrible advice, you're going to go to career services, get terrible advice from them, and then all that terrible advice, you're going to start to get a picture of how your resume needs to look for you. Be okay with that. No one resume is going to make all managers happy. I love an objective statement. I have an objective statement in my resume. Most of the managers that I've worked with in the past don't like them. They just want to jump right into the technical details, the skills, right? The background, the work experience. But that's your one chance to tell me about yourself. But don't write it if it's not custom, right? To say, I want to get a job in engineering. I know that you applied for my engineering position. That doesn't help me. There's no point in that objective statement beyond taking up space. But if you come in and you say, I want to get a job in communications engineering, supporting the defense industry where I can learn about communication theory and networking, I'm going to go, oh, well, at a minimum, they've read my rec because they know what I do and what I want, right? It's going to make a difference. So that's my only advice on objective statements. It's your decision if you have it there. Okay, so that's really all I have. One bit of advice when you get to the interview. You're interviewing them. In your mind, flip it around. You're going to UTD, you're getting a degree, you have a ton of skills, you're a great catch. You walk into that room, you're seeing if they're good enough to hire you. If you walk in with that attitude, right? Obviously, you don't want to be a jerk or act like they're not good enough to hire you. But if you walk in confident in your skills and paying attention to the fact that you're interviewing them, you'll be able to pick up better if it's actually a good fit for you. Because sometimes culture of an organization is not going to be a good fit. Sometimes it's going to be great. But ultimately, when you get to that point, my going in approach on every interview I ever do is if they don't hire me, well, that's kind of their loss. I mean, I'm not the greatest, I'm not the smartest, I'm not the best, but I do know what I bring to the table. And I know if they didn't want to hire me, I didn't want to work for them because something was not going to go well. So, all right, I'm done now. Any questions on anything I said? Okay.
All right. I need the mic because
Hello. Okay, cool. Thank you very much, Chuck, for that. Does nobody has any questions about resume stuff? Oh, so the
Okay.
question was.
The question was, what advice do you have for getting past kind of the bulk of the resumes to get your resume into someone's hand? Now, I'm going to put the mic down because if I get excited about this, I'll start blowing eardrums.
okay.
Number one piece of advice, make your resume stand out, right? If I'm going through a stack of 20 resumes, the ones that have novel formatting with good data structure, well written, they're going to stand out. The ones that have the skills right up front that I'm looking for in my job, they stand out. If you've done all of that and you're part of 200 people whose resumes all stand out, go talk to somebody. So I got a job at Rockwell Collins in 2007. After I got a master's, I went and got a master's because I didn't get a job at Rockwell Collins in 2006 when I graduated with my bachelor's. And when I was doing that, the manager said, well, hey, we've got this program we're set to win next year. When we win that, we're going to have to hire a bunch of people. So I kept the manager's email. And I sent him an email once a month. I was like, hey, just drop a line, see how you're doing. It was a good thing I did. I bombed that interview terribly. I mean, it was an awful interview. It was so bad, I went up to my hotel room and answered all the questions in the email and sent them to him. Because I was like, he's never going to hire me. I'm going to be jobless for the rest of my life. And I went and got a master's to do this. Like, holy crap, I'm really broke now. Talking to people helps, right? If you have a chance to network. Whenever I go to a networking event at a college and I'm hiring, I'm actually looking to make a job offer that day, right? Now, by the way, I'm not hiring right now, but if I was, I would be looking to hire one of you guys. That's why I'm here. You go to a networking event, like I know they have a networking event at one of these buildings a couple times a year where they bring in all of the big companies from the area. Those people are there to hire. They might not have a job right then, but they're there to meet you. They're there to find out about you. And the biggest thing you can do is make that impression. Talk to them. If you know about their company, talk about their company. Ultimately, build that network. So you know somebody that works at Collins Aerospace. If you want a job at Collins Aerospace, say, hey, Sri, here's my resume. I'm really looking for a job like this rec here. Now, thing you won't know until you get out in the industry is somebody that works in a company can see the manager that posted the rec if they look on the internal job board. So you can say, Sheree, I know you know who posted that rec. Can you give her my resume? I think it's good. I think I'm a good fit for that job. Now, that's not going to 100% get you the job, but what it does is it gets you around that pile, right? At a minimum, if Sheree came to me with a resume and be like, well, I like Sheree, so I'm going to read it. Might not be a fit, but I'm going to give it the time because of my respect for Sheree as an engineer. And so that is another way. You have to think of all these different ways, though. And you can't just sit back and wait, right? If you ever heard of somebody said, I've been applying for 2 years and I haven't gotten a job, and you really ask questions, they've probably been applying, right? They take the same resume, they dump it on 7 jobs on the same site. Well, first off, if you do that, HR sees it and they're like, well, this person's applying to everything. They don't know what they want. And that's what they tell us as managers, by the way. So be careful. And it's the same resume, so it's not tailored to any of the jobs. So you're kind of a fit for all of them, but not really a fit for any of them. And then career fairs, once you make those contacts, like try to leave with contacts. Try to leave with the name of the company you want to work at and keep reaching out. Those are the people that are going to help you get through the door. And when you get through the door, when you get that interview, that's your chance. As you made it to that point, then it's all on you.
So this is for one of the applications I'm working on right now. I found out that a friend of mine actually worked there in the past, and he has some contacts in the company. And do you have any advice for asking, kind of just cold messaging people and asking for referrals? Because I've seen people get referrals and get the chances of getting an internship increases a lot. And this friend of mine, he has contacts inside the company, but they don't know me. They only know my friend.
Okay.
Do you have any advice for me?
Can I
Yes.
repeat the question just for the stream?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so the question was like advice on cold messaging people to like get referrals, right? Okay.
Okay, anytime I do that for you, I'm putting my reputation on the line. So first thing, it better be a friend that understands and is willing to put the reputation on the line for you, right? You don't just call Joe who was in a class with you and be like, hey, Joe, I need a letter of recommendation. You want to make sure that you understand, is that a reputable friend? Because it can actually hurt if it's the wrong person, right? If he left that company and he didn't leave in a good fashion, that's not going to help you, right? That's going to actually be a negative, unless he really still has close friends back at the company. So the other piece to that is the easiest way to do it is just ask. So question never asked is always answered no. Most of the people that aren't my in-laws that have asked me for a recommendation, I've written a recommendation. And I didn't give my in-laws recommendation because I knew how they worked and I didn't want to work with them. So if this is somebody that understands your work ethic, the skill you bring, and they have the credibility of the organization, just ask. Just say, hey, I'm looking to get a job at Collins. I know you worked at Collins in the past. You told me you're still friends with a couple folks up there. Can you see if you can get my resume to them? And better if they're willing to write a letter. When I do that, I personalize it. I don't have a form letter. I don't write it to whom it may concern letter. I specifically write to the person that I'm handing that to say, I'm recommending this person. Here's why. Here's my experience with the person. Here's what I think you gain from considering this person. So, and make sure if you're asking for a recommendation, it's somebody that's willing to put in that work. Because just throwing a resume over a wall, that's not going to get you much. Might get you on top of the desk, but it doesn't get you to the top of the stack. So.
I think you had a question earlier.
You say you value skills the most on the resume, so it doesn't matter like the order, because like in my resume I have skills at the bottom, like education, projects, and all that. So does the order, like the location, matter as much?
So does the location of the skills section specifically on the resume matter? Yeah.
Not coming out of school. Because I know that most of your career services are going to tell you to put that at the bottom anyways. So most of the resume guidance you have puts that at the bottom. It gets more important to me the more I'm looking for specific skills. I'm going to look for it if it's at the bottom. It just makes it easier on me if it's right at the top. Because if I go through your resume and I look and I see that you're a U.S. citizen and you have Rust experience, and that's what I'm hiring for, I'm just going to set your resume aside. You're already in the mix because I saw that experience, that skill that I had in my rec. I don't have to read further to know that you're a viable candidate. Now I'm going to come back and I'm going to go through the other things that I'm looking for. But hopefully by the time I've done that, I've gotten like half the resumes out of the mix. So I don't have to worry about that. They didn't have the skills. And I'm also not worn out. I've been staring at your resume, trying to piece together if you ever used Rust as a coding language from your projects or anything like that. But it doesn't matter because we know coming out of school, the guidance you guys get from career services, and it's not bad guidance, just to be clear. So I like a skills-based resume. I know a lot of managers, they want to see it at the bottom because they care first about your GPA. They want that at the top. It's entirely up to you, though. What I will say is skills-based resumes are the best if you are in a situation where you have to shift jobs a lot. So seeing them be very successful for folks who are married to military members, they move every 2-3 years, right? To a normal person hiring, that looks like job hopping. Why are you changing jobs every 3 years? Are you a job hopper? Or are you staying this long enough? Right? By doing a skills-based resume, you start to address the skills that you bring to the table, and then you can get into why you were moving so often. It's really up to you, though. The things that you want to highlight the most should be right at the top. So.
So what if you know you want a job, but you don't know what you want to achieve? Like, how would you format your resume? Like, if an interviewer asks you, like, what do you want to achieve with this job if you get the position? Like, how are you supposed to answer that question if you don't know?
Don't say make money. That didn't work well for me. If you don't know what you want to achieve, be honest, right? The more honest you are, the better it's going to resonate. If you know, hey, I want to work at Collins. I think it's a great company. Not really sure I want to be a systems engineer. Sure you had to go through that last summer. But I'm going to give it a shot. It's okay to say, I don't even know what this really is. I think I understand it from the resume, and I've done a little bit of research on Incozy, but I'm really trying to just get an understanding of what I'm signing myself up for. And you may, like Cherie did, run screaming for the hills for software.
I did transfer.
But at the end of the day, I will tell you, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I don't know what I want to be next year. Now, that's okay as long as you know you want to do good when you're there. Nobody at work knows that I don't want to be when I grow up, except my manager, because they all think I know what I'm doing. I come in every day terrified they're going to realize I don't. That's okay. I enjoy what I'm doing. I'm happy to work with the people that I work with. I get amazing opportunities like this, like the opportunity to work with Cherie and the team this summer. And for me, that brings exactly what I want from my job. I can't actually quantify what I want out of my job to anybody that it'll make sense. So you don't have to do that. Just say, I'm really interested in your company. I'm interested in doing a great job working on a great team with great people. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So in the job description, people it says like what are the requirements for as a U.S. citizenship is required. Say for like a permanent resident, is it even worth applying for like in that position?
Unfortunately, no, especially for defense. Really, if that is on there, it is 100% you have to be a U.S. citizen. There have been a few exceptions I've seen in my career where people that had a green card or permanent residency made it. But usually, if that's there, it's going to be followed by the clearance, which you're not going to be able to get without the citizenship. If it's unclear, so if it's saying that, well, you know it's a commercial market. So if you look at some of the Collins Aerospace jobs that are in our commercial area, sometimes the FAA will actually require it. I would still apply. The reason I would still apply is I still have good skills. I know they do commercial work, and maybe I'll get a chance of getting on that manager's rep. That's right. This thing that they opened that rec for, I might not be a candidate for, but I might be a candidate for the next thing that's coming down the line. So, and that also means you should still go talk to companies. Collins Aerospace is a defense company. I work defense as a veteran. I will never not work defense. We have a huge commercial side. Most of Collins Aerospace is a commercial company. Right? We have Proline Fusion. If you bring on an airplane, you've flown with Collins Aerospace equipment. So we hire a lot of folks that need visas, permanent residence, green cards. And so that's still worth going and having the conversation. Now, you're going to get different people in different areas. If you go to UTD, you're going to get a lot of folks from McKinney, Renner, they're all defense areas. That said, if you run into me at a career fair and I get your resume, I'm going to turn around and say, okay, I can't hire this person needs hired. And I've successfully done this a lot of times. I'm going to go to all the managers I know in commercial, and I'm going to say, here's a person, you should go hire them. So the effort is still worth it, right? Just know that the odds get much longer.
Anyone else?
Yes. Has anyone ever done what you did where they send an email with all the interview responses?
You know, I've gotten a few emails, but no, I don't think I've ever seen anyone do that. I would probably hire them on the spot because I very nearly peed myself in that interview. So I'm going to tell the story because I think it's funny. So I was a non-traditional student. I was a college dropout, joined the Army, got out, got a degree, went to this big hiring event. The guy who said the hardest thing about group projects is finding someone good enough to work with me, he was there. He had an electrical engineering master's. I was intimidated because I had a master's in physics. I was at Rockwell Collins because I didn't know what kind of engineer I wanted to be. I just wanted to be an engineer. So I stayed in physics. I was old compared to everyone around me. I think I was only like 25, but I felt old compared to everyone around me coming out of school. And when I was talking to the interview, I didn't know what to say, right? Because I heard all these people talking about all these crazy things they did in school. I didn't do any of that crazy stuff. I had no internships, no co-ops, right? The only thing I had under my belt was I was old, right? And that's how I felt. And he asked, what do you bring to the table that nobody else in this room brings to the table? I'm not going to go into all the words I use, but I effectively said, I'm old. what I was trying to get at was I got a different background than everyone else in the room. Right? I've got the STEM degree. It's not that I'm not intelligent, but coming out of the Army, and this is what I wrote in the email, by the way, not what I said in the interview, is so I bring something unique, and that uniqueness is going to be an asset when I get on a team, because very likely you will have no one on the team that thinks like me, right? The value of diversity, that's what we're talking about here. So I summed it up by saying, I have a different toolbox, right? Where all of these people have hammers, I have no hammers, so nothing will be a nail to me. And then I ended it, and I drove home convinced I didn't get a job, right? Because this was one where they pulled you in and you got to stay in a hotel, and I was like, okay, I'm just leaving. This is too embarrassing. I'm not sticking around to find out I didn't get hired. And I got an offer. Right? He called the next day. I was completely shocked. Lost a lot of respect for the manager for hiring somebody like me at that time, considering how bad I did in the interview. But it was the best. It's the best thing I could have done at the time, and the only thing that I could do, to be honest with myself. Right? I knew the answer. I didn't communicate it well. I gave myself the chance to communicate it well in a form that I felt comfortable communicating. And then from there, I just accepted it was going to be what it was going to be. So.
All right, any other questions?
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Chuck. Want another round of applause? Okay. Yeah, that was a lot of good wisdom. I hope you guys absorbed it. I saw a lot of people taking notes. I like that. But yeah, Chuck's an amazing manager, and I think the advice he gives is really applicable across all jobs, not just defense jobs. So I hope you guys learned something. So we're gonna transition into an activity, and I'll hand this over to my team to explain.
So we have, you're supposed to edit your resume based on the job description. So this is a template that the UCC gave us, and so y'all can read it. But things to keep in mind is that you want to use the most of your space. Adjust the margin space so that you have like the most amount of space, but make sure it's like even. Use a consistent font for the resume and make sure that it's readable. Use quantitative examples, like if you increased revenue by 60%, add those numbers in. Use keywords like actionable words, and highlight your achievements, not just the responsibilities, and no acronyms. So these QR codes, you can scan the QR codes to get job descriptions, and you want to alter your resume as if you were applying for them. Don't just go for the data engineering one. Try to like put yourself in other positions if you wanted those positions. So try to do all of them if you want to.
All right.
Do the QR codes work, everybody?
Oh yeah. Let me. All right, we're good? All right, here are some things to keep in mind while you are optimizing your resume. Highlighting technical skills and projects, emphasizing your education, and then, like Chuck said, tailor your resume to the jobs you want to apply for. And of course, try to include your soft skills and activities. All right, go ahead, guys.
Really for me. Kids, army, one of the things that we started to realize so part of us budget bringing, I didn't know what training we had to do it, but well, we asked to host. I'm a board education actually. They probably could have done it if they were. But it was images and videos. Those have been already. they came up with a concept. It's a document that goes and makes this particular model test, which sounds easy, so certainly complex. And so, what we got to do, and that is, you did this, we looked at this like, really well, because Scott comprehended what you're asking, she understood what you're asking. So part of what they had to do is they had to actually sit on it. To help us understand what it actually things with it. Yeah. Because what they wanted was they wanted something that was different. But the decision change. Areas where we just want to be train models and actually make decisions. Because that never know you're going to
All right, hello everybody. Are we done optimizing our resumes? Can I get a thumbs up, thumbs down? Okay, okay. All right, so I'm gonna have our resume reviewers come up to the front, please. Oh, yeah, yeah. Actually, I'll have my resume reviewers go over here, and then if you want to get your resume kind of just looked at and edited for like formatting things more than anything, you can come up and just kind of like line up, and we'll just like do that. So yeah, all right. Um, all right, don't be shy, guys. Come on. All right. This table.
Yeah, you could.
Yeah, it's good. It's like it was like
I would say,
Yeah,
pull your course out.
So that's your explaining, hey, this is what I did in my job. That's
I'm gonna system.
of course.
I'll call it out on that.
Does anyone else want their resume reviewed, or are we good? Okay. Oh, by the way, guys, the attendance QR code number is 8081, 8081. Sorry for not putting that up earlier. Let me just throw it up there just in case y'all have to.
So,
Oh, yeah, so remember?